The rain had just subsided, leaving behind a damp, earthy smell that clung to the mud-caked paths of the village. I walked slowly, my eyes observing the subtle life around me. Chickens scurried under the wet straw roofs, dogs barked at distant shadows, and the river in the distance roared like a beast, still angry at the storm. This village, like many others, held its secrets in silence. Secrets that one needed both patience and a keen eye to uncover. Rafiq. Oh, Rafiq. Everyone knew him as the Kam Chor, the lazy man of the village. But it wasn't always laziness, I thought. Perhaps it was fear, disguised as lethargy or foolish trust in the wrong people. I had observed him over weeks, noting how his days began late, how he avoided the fields, and how his wife, Fatima, shouldered the burden of their household. She was the true heart of the home, quiet yet strong, her hands roughened by labor and worry. The villagers often whispered about Rafiq's failures. They said his father had left him with nothing but lessons. Lessons that Rafiq seemed incapable of learning. I, Malik Safdar Hayat, was there not just to note, but to understand. There is a rhythm to laziness, a pattern to despair, and it always leaves traces, footprints that the observant eye can follow. One night, under the heavy clouds and the threat of more rain, Rafiq slipped quietly out of his hut. I had followed him from a distance, careful to remain unseen. In the shadows, he met a man known in whispers as Hamid, a man many in the village considered a saint. Hamid had no official power, no title, but the villagers trusted his words more than their own judgment. There was an air of mystery, almost reverence, around him. Yet I had learned that respect without understanding is dangerous. Hamid whispered instructions to Rafiq in the rain. I could see his hands shaking as he nodded, his fear mingling with blind trust. "Do as I say," Hamid murmured, "and your life will change." Little did Rafiq know that the path he was being led down was paved with manipulation, and that every step would test both his morality and his courage. For nights after, Rafiq followed Hamid's instructions blindly. He carried bundles into the forest, tied ropes around trees, and performed strange tasks that made no sense to anyone else. Fatima began noticing these odd behaviors. Her worry was palpable. She confronted him once, and I watched from a distance as dead tension thickened the air between them. The villagers began murmuring about strange lights and shadows at night. Children whispered of the ghostly tasks, and women clutched their chadors tighter when Rafiq walked past. The forest itself seemed alive, the wind carrying an echo of dread. I observed Rafiq for days, noting every detail, the way his hands trembled, the hesitation in his steps, and the fear that now coated his once carefree demeanor. Hamid's instructions were meticulous, yet dangerous, and Rafiq's blind obedience made him vulnerable. There is always a moment when fear and trust collide, and I could see it forming like a storm on the horizon. One night, at the height of the monsoon, Rafiq disappeared into the dense forest near the river. He carried a heavy bundle, his figure barely visible under the sheets of rain. Fatima, driven by love and fear, followed him, slipping on the muddy ground, her voice swallowed by the roar of the river. I watched in silence, my heart pounding, not out of fear for myself, but for the fragile lives caught in the web of blind trust and manipulation. The night was a tapestry of thunder, lightning, and the relentless storm. Rafiq reached a precarious cliff near the river, his bundle soaked and heavy. Fatima ran after him, calling his name, but the wind snatched her words. I stepped closer, hidden by the darkness, trying to understand the unfolding scene. Rafiq hesitated, confusion and fear contorting his face. The bundle he carried, I realized, was part of Hamid's twisted instructions. Fatima slipped, her scream cut short as the river's current claimed her. Rafiq's horrified eyes followed her descent, his guilt already cementing in his heart. The villagers, alerted by distant screams, gathered at the riverbank, their faces pale with terror. Hamid vanished that night, leaving Rafiq alone to face the consequences of his blind obedience. I began my investigation immediately. Footprints in the mud, broken branches, and disturbed earth told a story that Rafiq himself could barely comprehend. The storm had washed away some evidence, but the patterns remained clear. This was no accident. The psychological tension was thick. Rafiq trembled, unable to articulate what had happened. The villagers murmured suspicions, and I could feel the fear and anger growing in their eyes. But my role was to see clearly, to untangle the manipulation from the truth. I knew Hamid's influence had been dangerous, and if left unchecked, it would claim more victims. I tracked Hamid to a neighboring village, guided by whispers, rumors, and the small, unmistakable signs left behind by his visits. Confronting him was like staring into a mirror of arrogance and denial. He first refused everything, claiming innocence, but with persistence and the help of local officers, the truth emerged. Hamid had manipulated Rafiq with promises of wealth and security, using his reputation as a saint to instill obedience. He had orchestrated the tasks to test Rafiq's loyalty, pushing him to the brink of moral collapse. The tragedy of Fatima was the result, a cruel lesson in blind faith and misplaced trust. Rafiq faced the consequences, his heart heavy with remorse, his spirit fractured. The villagers, once reverent of Hamid, began to understand the danger of following anyone without questioning, no matter how wise or seemingly holy. I reflected on the events as I documented them. Faith in God and in one's own conscience is the ultimate guide. Blind obedience to human authority, even to those revered as saints, can lead to disaster. Hard work, moral courage, and personal responsibility are what shape destiny, not the words of manipulative guides. As the sun rose over the rain-soaked village, revealing the scars of tragedy and the lessons learned, I knew this story would stay with everyone, not just as a tale of one man's laziness, but as a warning of the peril in blind trust.